Crossroad fans, your attention, please. Welcome to Jimmy at the Crossroads, as it is episode 90. It is also Washington Examiner Wednesday, and on today's show, we'll be discussing the HEALS Act, plus the Senate battleground in 2020. That race is heating up between John Hickenlooper and U.S. Senator Cory Gardner. Plus, Jay Heflin and his intake later on the HEALS Act. That's all coming up. Jimmy at the Crossroads, Washington Examiner Wednesday. Stay tuned.
And that, my friends, is how America was made great once again. Breaking at this hour, Jimmy Sengenberger is currently at the crossroads of politics and economics. Radio broadcaster master, now the celeb on the web. He's the smarty of the party. He's in cahoots with the grassroots. Jimmy at the Crossroads brings you thought-provoking commentary, hard-hitting interviews, original satire, and the best bumper music known to man. Jimmy at the Crossroads!
Gonna talk money, gonna talk politics, great for all generations. Oh, what a great mix, I said. Gonna talk money, gonna talk politics, great for all generations. Oh, what a great mix. I got Jimmy at the Crossroads, making sense out of nonsense. People want answers, they want to understand. They come to the crossroads and Jimmy gives them the plan. I said, gonna talk money, gonna talk politics, great for all generations. Oh, what a great mix. I got Jimmy at the crossroads, making sense out of nonsense. Come on, Jimmy, what you got?
Hello, my friends, and welcome to another edition of Jimmy at the Crossroads. I'm Jimmy Sengenberger, your host for the program. Once again, bringing you engaging, intelligent talk, Sang style, in partnership with the Washington Examiner. And it is such a pleasure and a privilege to be with you today, as it is always, as the great Biff Gore sings, do our level best to make sense out of nonsense. Thanks for joining us today. Big show coming up in just a bit. We will be joined by U.S. Senator Cory Gardner right here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. We're going to talk about one of the top U.S. Senate races in the country. He is perhaps the most vulnerable Republican senator in the nation. We will talk with Senator Gardner about happenings in Washington, D.C., as well as his race against challenger John Hickenlooper, the former governor of Colorado. That'll be up in just a little bit here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. And by the way, before we get into Washington Examiner Wednesday, I want to remind you, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to the show YouTube channel, youtube.com/Jimmy at the Crossroads. That's Jimmy at the Crossroads on YouTube. Also, follow me on Twitter at Sang Center. You see it right on the screen right there. Sang with an E, not an A, Center on Twitter. And Facebook. Jimmy Sengenberger, media personality. Like the page, Jimmy Sengenberger Pro, facebook.com/Jimmy Sengenberger Pro on Facebook. And, of course, jimmyatthecrossroads.com, the place to go for content and so much more. And, of course, don't forget to follow, like, subscribe, all those good things to our friends and partners at the Washington Examiner on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and at WashingtonExaminer.com. Speaking of the Washington Examiner, today is Washington Examiner Wednesday, where we like to check in with one of our friends from the Examiner to dive into some of the key issues of the day. Today, I'm very pleased to be joined by the business editor at the Examiner, Jay Heflin, joins us here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. Jay, welcome to the show, sir. It's so good to have you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Good to be here.
So the struggle for me was this week. I mean, you're a business editor. You're focusing on economics, what's going on in business. There's nothing to talk about this week in that regard. I don't think the Republican, they just unveiled finally a big, I don't know, are they calling it a relief bill, a stimulus package, whatever it is. It's named the HEALS Act, and it just dropped this week.
It did, and it's about $1 trillion, and the House has already passed their portion of it, which was more than that. So basically what the Senate has to do now is come together, get enough votes to pass it, and then basically confer with the House on their bill, and hopefully they will agree and pass something that Trump will sign into law. Because right now, with the flare-ups of the coronavirus happening in several parts of the country, you're going to probably start seeing jobs loss, more jobs lost than actual gains. We've already saw that 2 weeks ago. We're expecting that to continue to happen. And basically, until this virus is controlled, the economy is going to be out of control.
Yeah, I mean, that is the big rub here. You want to get people back to work and get the economic gears rolling again, yet at the same time, the struggle is that the virus isn't letting up, especially in particular parts of the country. I want to play cut 5 here. This is Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell this week when he unveiled the HEALS Act on the floor, kind of summarizing what their particular proposal is intended to do.
We have produced a tailored and targeted draft that will cut right to the heart of 3 distinct crises facing our country: getting kids back in school, getting workers back to work, and winning the healthcare fight against the virus. Kids, jobs, and healthcare. Kids, jobs, and healthcare.
Kids, jobs, and healthcare. So, Jay Heflin, how does this bill go about achieving those objectives, according to Mitch McConnell and Republican leadership?
Well, they give money to the schools so they can have some sort of protective stuff. They provide money to the healthcare people as well. The problem is that everybody wants this. Everybody wants their kids to go back to school. Everybody wants to go back to their job. Everybody wants to be healthy. But if we put people in these places before protections are actually put in, we could have flare-ups again. I mean, look at what happened to Major League Baseball in 1 week. There are 2 games that didn't happen yesterday because of the coronavirus. Now they have a meeting saying, what are we going to do moving forward? So it is something that everybody wants the economy to get back and moving again. The issue is how. And so I agree with McConnell that kids should go to school. But in my district where I live, the virus is stable, but not decreasing. And so the schools have said, okay, we're not going to actually have kids come to school until the numbers can actually go lower. So that basically means that my kids are going to be home, remote learning, and I'm going to have to help them because that's what we had to do last time. And that is a huge pain. I'll be honest with you. It's not fun.
Sure.
And so, yes, I want my kids to go back to school, but under the right circumstances. And so what I think that the Senate bill is trying to do is to provide some sort of protections for these people. But the real thing you need to do is basically get this virus under control. And recently there's been a letter that's come out by some doctors that say, shut it down again and redo it. We missed it for the first time when we did it in March when the CARES Act was supposed to handle this. Well, we didn't do it correctly. We opened too soon. And look at the cities now or in the states that have opened, and you see spikes in the virus. What do we think is going to be different if kids go back to school in, like, let's say 3 weeks and there's been no protections? Teachers are going to get sick. So how do we do this? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So in terms of the reopening of schools, I mean, I don't want to get too deeply into that because I tend to believe that at least in most parts of the country, we have the ability and the wherewithal to reopen the schools, particularly because the scientific data that I have seen shows that transmission, especially from children to adults, is very minimal and the risks to children are very small. And in terms of adults, I think you could separate the higher risk parents and or rather high risk teachers and have them be the ones who do remote learning for, say, students who their parents don't want to send them to school because they have any concerns, and then have lower risk teachers that can teach in the classroom. I've been talking a good bit about this particular topic, but your point is still well taken that there are a lot of people across the country who are very concerned about the prospect of reopening schools and what that could mean. So in terms of legislation here in the HEALS Act to try and help move that along, what are they doing? Are they saying, hey, we're going to give additional money to school districts to be able to provide adequate PPE to the teachers and to administrators? Or anything specific that we know is in there regarding schools?
Well, it's basically money for the schools to let them do what they think needs to have happen, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
The issue, though, is still like, let's not put the cart before the horse. Let's make sure. And I agree with you. There are certain areas of the country where the virus is under some sort of control, but basically you have to test everybody to see who actually has it and who actually doesn't. And if you're asymptomatic, which some people say could be for 3 weeks, how do you even know if you have it and if you haven't been tested? And in many areas of the world where schools are going back and they're fine, they have tested, and so the virus is under control. They can identify the people who are sick and say you have to learn online, and I think we have to do that as well. But as for the money for the schools, yes, it is there, and I think it's possibly more than what the House provided, but the House had other things going on as well. But so it is there, but the big issue is going to be is if they can get the backing to actually get this out and passed so they can confer with the House and get money moving again into the country, because it's going to take, Congress has to act on this before money can be moved. And we're right now in the end of, we're close to we are nearing August, and there's a lot of other things happening beginning next month that could prove detrimental to the economy.
So in terms of the unemployment provisions, let's go there in terms of the economic benefits. I mean, currently, at least the previous way things were being done was $600 a week in additional unemployment support. Republicans in this new HEALS Act, because that has expired, that is done at the end of this month. In the
Right.
HEALS Act, they want an additional $200 instead of $600. What's going on there, and is it something that the Democrats and Republicans, who are deeply divided on this particular point of unemployment benefits, can actually reach some sort of agreement?
I think that they can reach an agreement because Democrats have actually said $600 was too much. And I talked to 7 people who were unemployed that said, I'm not looking for work because I get this amount of money.
Yes.
And I make more money than I do from work. But here's the funny thing is I spoke to them recently, like a couple weeks ago, or maybe a week and a half ago. They are now looking for work and can't get it. So now they're kind of kicking themselves because they said, look, I had this money. Now that it's gone away, they kind of thought they would just get hired again at their next job. And many of these people that I spoke with are restaurant people. These restaurants are opening at a quarter capacity. So they already have their wait staff. They don't need more people because they're not growing. The idea was you were going to start at a quarter for a couple of weeks, go to 50%, 75% full in like 4 weeks. Well, it's been 6 weeks and no one's really expanding that in many places of the country because people are still getting sick. So these workers that thought they're going to have a job now realize they're not going to because their restaurant's not going to hire them. So now they have to look for other sorts of work, which is even harder sometimes because they may not have the experience that's required for that another job.
Again, we're talking with Jay Heflin, who is business editor at the Washington Examiner. Yeah, I think I've seen many instances where people were not going back to work. Like employers are calling them saying, are you coming back? We have the opportunity for you to return to work. And they said, I'm actually making more on unemployment benefits. Eventually I'll come back, but I'm going to wait until this is up, which is exactly what Republicans who were opposed to the idea of $600 a week were saying would happen. And then it is interesting, as you're pointing out, Jay, that we're at a point where some of these people are like, okay, I'm ready to go back to work, especially because the $600 is gone. But now the job that I had before, which I could have gone back to previously but decided not to, is gone. So in that regard, I mean, does that bolster Democrats' case to include more than $200 in this relief package? Or is it something where Republicans can say you might end up just exacerbating this particular problem and discouraging work as it already happened?
I think what I've heard some Democrats say, and I won't say names because I don't want to pin it on them,
Sure.
but there is an openness to lowering the $600 payment as long as there's other things in the bill that will allow these people to have money, i.e. the $1,200 stimulus check that's going out. And so I think there, from what I've been told, there is a willingness on the Democrats' part to actually lower the $600 payment. To $200, I'm not sure, but there probably is some sort of give there, maybe on both sides, that you might see $450. There's been some talk of 70% of the enhanced payment, which would be $450. Then plus that would be on top of the state aid. So if you make like $380 on state aid, you'd make like $700-800 a month. Is that enough for some people to like make more? Yes, but other people, no, they would be making less.
Yeah.
But I think that the biggest issue is that they just basically have to figure this out quickly and get it into the pipeline so people can get this relief. Because as we said, this stuff ran out last week or this week, and these people are going to be done.
Yeah. Well, one thing that you mentioned that I also wanted to bring up is the $1,200 in so-called stimulus payments. That is in this package, renewing or putting out another batch of stimulus checks?
It's in the Senate and the House, I believe, but different. I forget what the cutoffs are. I think it's $75,000 if you make $75,000 less in the House. I forget if the Senate is 45 or 75. So I forget what the details are on that.
Sure. Any other key provisions in this bill or anything that maybe it doesn't address? I know, for example, that you've been reporting, Jay, about time running out for Congress to extend this eviction moratorium that was also put in place.
Yeah, there's a perfect storm brewing there because basically this eviction notice was for buildings that had federal assistance. So if your building has federal assistance, you couldn't do you could not evict someone until July 25th. And so many of these people, and I've talked to people within the apartment world, the $600 payment that just ran out was a big reason why people weren't evicted. They actually could pay their rent, is because of that payment. Well, that payment is now gone. So a lot of people are thinking that August might be okay because people save the money and will make August rent. But what about September? If there's nothing that happens with legislation for some sort of unemployment assistance, these people will not have enough money for their rent and will go through the eviction process. Now, saying that, it's not as if you don't have the rent on the first of the month and on the second, you are kicked out. It doesn't work like that. There'll be a 30-day notice. And then even after that, you have to go through a court procedure, and that can take a while. So I've talked to people that said it can be anywhere from 2 to 6 months that a person wouldn't, that a person would not be evicted until 2 to 6 months later after not making rent. So it isn't something that could be a huge problem, but then again, you never know. Would the court systems be quicker in other parts of the country and less so in other parts? So you just don't know, but it's just something, why do we want to tangle with this? Why don't we get the relief out there so these people can stay in their homes?
Once again, Jay Heflin, our guest from the Washington Examiner, where he's business editor. So is there anything that we should be keeping in mind and observing in terms of this legislation, the HEALS Act moving forward, a paycheck protection program, any other components, or maybe some political dynamics that may be at play, Jay?
Well, the paycheck protection program is something that you now can take. Used to, businesses had two choices. You can take the employee retention credit or the payroll protection loan. You now can take both, and so under the Senate bill. So that's actually a good thing because basically people needed both. One thing with the paycheck protection program that they did is that it used to be that you had to take, I believe it was 75% of the money had to go to payroll for that loan to be forgiven. Well, in New York City, rent is way more expensive than payroll, and so you put 75% of that loan money to payroll for it to be forgiven. You don't have money for rent,
right? And
so your business is gone, but you're paying employees that no longer have a place to work. And so I think that that's something that they need to look at to make sure that it's built so it works for all of the companies. I mean, in high rent areas and low rent areas, because if not, it's useless. And so far, it's gotten good feedback to something because that's all they had.
Right.
But there have been some arguments saying it was too tough to figure out. I needed a lawyer to actually help me with it, so I had to pay a lawyer X to get Y money back, and so it was considered like a lost loser. But I think those are the things that need to be looked at. And I also think the biggest thing is the unemployment, the enhanced unemployment payment. That'll be a big determination. If there's an agreement on that, chances are this bill will go through.
And finally on this topic, and then I want to shift to the Federal Reserve and what's going on there with their crisis lending program. In Cut 4, we have Mitch McConnell this week during his speech on the Senate floor announcing the HEALS Act, talking a little bit about the political dynamics and urging Democrats to come aboard.
Now we need our Democratic colleagues to reprise their part as well. They need to put aside the partisan stonewalling we saw on police reform, rediscover the spirit of urgency that got the CARES Act across the finish line, and quickly join us around the negotiating table. It will take bipartisan cooperation to make the HEALS Act into law for the American people. The Senate will not waste time with pointless partisanship. There's a reason why even Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer themselves have publicly downplayed the multi-trillion-dollar socialist manifesto they published some weeks back and have suggested the real serious discussion would begin when Republicans released
our proposal. So that's Senator Mitch McConnell laying out the politics from his viewpoint. How do you assess getting this bill, the HEALS Act, to the finish line?
Well, McConnell has called this a starting point, and so this is his first out. Like, this is what I want to do. What do you want to do? He has welcomed people to come in and say, look, let's change this, let's change that. So I think you're going to see a lot of changes in this bill. And then the House bill, I believe only one Republican voted for it, if I remember correctly. The Senate is definitely going to need more than that, because I believe they need 60 to get this bill passed. And if that's required, this bill will probably be the compromise package that will then go to the House, hopefully pass, and then move on. So basically, we will probably see a lot of changes in this bill. I mean, McConnell's welcoming it. He called it a starting point, not an end point. And so we will probably see a lot of changes in this bill as time goes on. And I've been hearing 2 weeks, and these guys want to be out. They want this bill done before they leave for the August break, when the Senate, which I believe is in 2 weeks. So we might be seeing a lot of changes in this bill over the next couple of weeks as negotiations continue.
Once again, Jay Heflin, our guest, business editor at the Washington Examiner. Let's talk about the Federal Reserve and what they're doing in terms of extending several lending facilities to businesses into the end of the year. This was set to expire on September 30th. What's going on here, Jay?
Basically, it's the Federal Reserve gives money to the banks, so the banks can give money to the businesses. That stuff was supposed to be out of money, or they didn't have the ability or the authorization to do this beyond September 30th. They're realizing that we need to just basically make sure we can keep giving this money out as much as we can, so that way we don't have to deal with this later. Like, what you don't want to have happen is that there's a crisis and the lending authority's gone. So they're basically pushing this out so they can cover themselves to make sure that if they need to give money to the banks to provide to the businesses, that they can do it, and that they have the authority to actually do it. This required Treasury authorization or Treasury okay, which they gave. And so now it's open until, many of these facilities are open until the end of the year. Now, that doesn't mean that the application period is for the end of the year. So with the PPP, I believe it's August 8th when that is over, unless they extend it in this next package. So, but that doesn't mean that the amount of money that comes to you is stopped. But you just have to have an application approved before you can get that money. And the Federal Reserve just basically made sure that their pipeline was open for the end of the year. So in case these programs continue or don't continue, they're ready to serve it with money if they need to.
And the implications of this move on the part of the Fed would seem to be pretty significant.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, what they've been doing is significant. I mean, just crazy. I mean, we're at zero rate for how long? They're meeting today and tomorrow, and there's no thought of moving the rate. Chairman Powell has said, we're not even thinking about moving the rate. And so it's zero forever, which in some cases is free money. But that shows you what sort of situation that we're in, is that we don't know which economy is going to lock down before. There's now reports saying that there are some cities that are unofficially locking down. They're just saying, we're just going to lock down. And so I know there's been things on Google alerts that'll show traffic in certain parts of the country are down by 40, 50%, and that's where the red spots are. So even if there's no official lockdown, you could actually see an unofficial lockdown. And that also has the same effect on the economy, which is nothing happens. People lose their jobs, all this stuff. So the Fed has to be prepared to shovel out the money because it can only be loans. They say that all the time. There's no grants with the Fed. It's all loans, because we just might be needing that for months to come, because we don't know how long this virus is going to be with us.
We will be watching the economic policy movements of the Congress, the Fed, the President, all different levels of government with great interest here on Jimmy at the Crossroads, to be sure. Jay Heflin, business editor of the Washington Examiner. So great to have you today. Thanks for coming on to break these things down.
Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And stay well and healthy there.
I shall try.
Thank you.
I shall try. You too.
Once again, Jay Heflin joining us here on Jimmy at the Crossroads with our partners at the Washington Examiner on Washington Examiner Wednesday. Coming up here on the show, we will be joined by none other than U.S. Senator Cory Gardner of Colorado, who's in an embattled Senate seat up for re-election this November. Keep it right here. Jimmy at the Crossroads, coming to you in partnership with the Washington Examiner.
America's politics are crazy. The culture is in flux. That's why we work hard to help you keep up.
More politics, more culture, and more access.
We focus on the biggest stories of the day with some of the biggest names in politics and punditry.
Go to our website, WashingtonExaminer.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Concerned about that trade deficit? Looking for that magic solution? I'm Bill of Goods for ScamWow, the tariff towel. It's like a tax. It's like a fee. It's like a penalty. This tariff really sucks up the trade deficit. And the jobs we'll save are tremendous. This is for the House, the Senate, the POTUS. You'll be saying crap every time you use the ScamWow tariff towel. Look at this. It just does the work. Why wouldn't you want to pay twice the price for that washing machine? How much would you pay for this tariff? It'll make this microwave seem like it's brand new. And at only twice the price. Look at the way the tariff towel cleans your clock. Wow, look at that. So clean, you can see the future. You can see future tariffs coming from a mile away. Look at the way it polishes these stars. Boy, if that don't make you feel patriotic, huh?
I love paying extra. I don't even worry about it anymore, since the trade deficit will go down.
Look at this tariff. I love this tariff. It's like a security blanket.
All I can say is, scam, wow!
ScamWow compels other nations to use their own tariff towels on our stuff, making our goods more expensive overseas. Whoopee.
The micro tariff is for everything, for lumber, for steel, even solar panels. It'll melt that trade deficit down. I don't know. It sells itself, America. The ScamWow sells for 25%. But if you call in the next 20 minutes, because we can't do this all term, we'll give you the second tariff absolutely free. That's 4 tariffs for 25%. And it comes with a 5-year warranty. Here's how to order.
Call 1-800-RIP-YOU-OFF. ScamWow is not available in capitalism and is made in Washington. Beware of ScamWow grift. 1-800-RIP-YOU-OFF. Call now.
You're not
I'll give you the alternative.
You're not sure. You've got to create 30 million jobs over 3 years.
Yeah.
Tell me what companies can do that.
So, first
tell me
of
what
all,
20 or 50 or 100 companies can do that.
I can't tell you a specific companies that can do that because I don't know. In fact,
or investors.
But
Pick the greatest investors of
right.
all time.
Well, but I don't presume to think that I know who's going to be the best investor, the best company to do that. Just as I don't think the government is, that I could presume that the government's going to be effective to do that.
Gonna talk money, gonna talk politics, with all generations. Oh, what a great mix, I said.
Has been on a determined campaign to convince the world that everything is hunky-dory. And when the government actually spends so much effort trying to convince you of something, you got to be very suspicious.
Your lawyers don't tell you even all the evidence that the government has given them, the few meager disclosures that were made literally at the 11th hour after you'd already been coerced into pleading guilty.
Hours of video evidence of Nancy Pelosi coming up on your porches and jujitsuing your precious packages, while Chuck Schumer waits in the street in the getaway van because he's too afraid to be a man and do his own dirty work.
Come on, Jimmy, what you got?
Is it scary that YouTube and Twitter and Facebook have this kind of power over us? Of course it is. But you know what? These things didn't always exist, and they won't always exist. David beat Goliath. The little guy can beat the big guy.
So we have to figure out ways to fight in which we are able to have that kind of reach. We can build our own megaphones. And this is a little bit of a longer term project. It goes beyond Trump's re-election because it affects every election.
I'm good, man. It's a partnership. We're like this, Jimmy. I got you.
Jimmy, can I tell you that I've done about 200 shows in the last 3 weeks for this book tour? This has been by far my favorite interview.
And that, my friends, is how America was made great once again. Breaking at this hour, Jimmy Sengenberger is currently at the crossroads of politics and economics. Radio broadcaster master. Now the celeb on the web. He's the smarty of the party. He's in cahoots with the grassroots. Jimmy at the Crossroads brings you thought-provoking commentary, hard-hitting interviews, original satire, and the best bumper music known to man. Jimmy at the Crossroads.
I got Jimmy at the crossroads, making sense out of no sense.
And ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce to you your host of the Crossroads, Mr. Sang Style, Jimmy Sengenberger.
Yes, indeed, I am Jimmy Sengenberger. Welcome back to Jimmy at the Crossroads, coming to you in partnership with the Washington Examiner. Once again, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimmy at the Crossroads, youtube.com/Jimmy at the Crossroads. Also, be sure to like the Facebook page, facebook.com/Jimmy Sengenberger Pro. That is for the Jimmy Sengenberger Media Personality page, as well as on Twitter. Follow me at Sang Center. That's Sang with an E, not an A, Center on Twitter. And at jimmyatthecrossroads.com, where you can access a tremendous selection of fun items at the shop. Sign up for the Crossroads Club membership program, access all of our content, and so much more. And once again, be sure to like, subscribe, follow all those good things to our friends at the Washington Examiner on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and of course, at WashingtonExaminer.com. And speaking of the Examiner, my thanks to Jay Heflin, business editor at the Examiner, for joining us in the last segment to break down the HEALS Act, which is one of the topics that I spoke about earlier with U.S. Senator Cory Gardner of Colorado, who's in battle right now. I mean, he's in a very tough fight for re-election in the state of Colorado. And one of the things to keep in mind about this state is that it is a growing one in terms of its significance in American politics. So it'll be fascinating to see how it all unfolds. A new poll that just came out this week shows that Hickenlooper is starting to lose some ground against Gardner as he's gaining some ground. A new Morning Consult poll showing 42% Cory Gardner, 48% John Hickenlooper, the former governor of Colorado, which, you know, you may still say, hey, he's behind. Okay, he's behind. But interestingly, he is starting to catch up now to his challenger, John Hickenlooper. We talked about the race for the United States Senate in this pivotal election process with Senator Gardner in our interview, discussing as well, of course, the HEALS Act and the Great American Outdoors Act. Let's go ahead and roll the tape. Here on Jimmy at the Crossroads, we always like to talk with newsmakers when we can, and that's part of the reason why I am very pleased to welcome back to Jimmy at the Crossroads. We haven't had him on in a few months, but it's about time we brought him back. U.S. Senator from Colorado, Cory Gardner, joins us here on the program. Senator, good to talk with you, sir. Welcome.
Hey, good talking to you. Thanks for having me, Jimmy.
Thank you. So I want to jump right into a few different topics of the day. I want to talk about the state of your race for United States Senate here in a few minutes. But first, there's a big debate going on in D.C., a lot of backroom conversations, but now things are out front too, on what to do in regards to the economy as we're still trying to address this economic malaise due to the coronavirus pandemic. The HEALS Act was just introduced this week in the United States Senate. What do you make of the legislation?
Well, look, this is going to be a starting point of conversation about what we need to do to address three primary things, a filter that I look through to make decisions on every action we take when it comes to this pandemic. Number one, are we stopping the spread of the coronavirus? Are we flattening the curve? And we need to take measures to do those two things. Secondly, we need to make sure that we're helping individuals, people who are out of work, they're sheltering in place, unable to go to work, they've lost their jobs, making sure that they're okay. And three, what we can do to make sure that businesses are able to get their doors back open, people back to work. We have to do all three things at the same time. You don't do one and then two and then three. And so that's what I'm looking at, and that's how I'm analyzing this legislation. But it's going to have to come out of the Senate with bipartisan support. That's just the nature of the Senate. And I look forward to helping the people of Colorado based on those three parameters.
And so, Senator Gardner, we're talking as well in the Republican proposal of $1 trillion. The Democrats want to spend even more in the House proposal. I mean, we already have spent multi-trillions on this pandemic and government responses. What do you make of the budgetary implications of this and how we can even afford it?
Well, it's a huge concern. Right? I mean, we know we had a budget challenge, a deficit problem, a debt problem going into coronavirus, and certainly spending more money to get out of it makes that even more challenging. But if we don't have an economy that gets moving again, if we have even more unemployment, if we have businesses that close and don't reopen, how will we ever pay back what we spent even before coronavirus, let alone what we're doing in the middle of it? So we have to right now undertake the best efforts we can to get this country moving again, to get our schools safely open, to provide solutions on a vaccine and treatments and therapeutics, to make sure businesses are able to get their doors open, to rehire people again. So we have to make sure that we don't create disincentives to work. We have to make sure that we create incentives for businesses opening again and making sure that we get through this together. So, government said shut down. They did it out of love for their neighbor and their community and to stop the spread of coronavirus. Now we have a responsibility to get it moving and back open again.
Senator Cory Gardner, one of the questions that people have been discussing is the unemployment provision. The previous CARES Act had $600 a week that was given additional to the basic unemployment amount to people. Now the Republican proposal, the HEALS Act, is $200. Democrats are saying that's not nearly enough. What's your take on that? Because we have seen this show to be a bit of a disincentive to work. Some people saying, I'm making more money on unemployment than going back to work.
Yeah, I think both Republicans and Democrats alike want to make sure that we're helping people in need, but not creating an unfair competition between the government and the private sector. So let's continue to help those people who need it. Let's create jobs and get people into the workforce without a disincentive. The people of Colorado want to work. People who don't have a job right now, they want to work. But let's make sure that we don't put the government in the place of the private sector in terms of unfair competition.
Now, Senator Gardner, one more thing on the economy and the implications here of this legislation. When you have the government trying to figure out, okay, we give money to businesses for the Paycheck Protection Program, maybe enhance that some more. You've got the unemployment provisions. You've got a variety of different aspects. How reliable are these programs, do you think, in helping us to get the economic gears rolling again? Or is this more of a relief package right now than a stimulus package?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, you've got the sort of the stimulus in terms of helping individuals with costs that they may have incurred or ability to go out into the marketplace and spend money that they have otherwise decided not to because they're able to. They feel more comfortable doing that. We also have the Paycheck Protection Program expansions in this. Under certain circumstances, a loan that has already been issued under the Paycheck Protection Program, you could go back and get a second draw on that loan. To help you meet even more expenses going forward if you're having additional challenges in this economy. So it is sort of relief for that business. It's also stimulative in terms of getting those dollars into the economy. So I think this bill is trying to create both the fronts an answer for what we have to do to get this country moving again.
Again, Senator Cory Gardner of Colorado is our guest here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. One bill on a different topic that you helped to spearhead as the lead co-sponsor, the lead sponsor in the United States Senate is the Great American Outdoors Act. And I wanted to give you a moment to tell us about this important piece of legislation, because one of the things that, as I've been digging into it, that I really liked is that you're not raising taxes, you're not creating new funding sources, you are funding existing programs more, dealing with national parks and otherwise, and using existing revenue sources and some pots of money that haven't been applied in one place or another but are available right now. Tell us about the Great American Outdoors Act.
Yeah, Jimmy, thanks for that. The Great American Outdoors Act is the most significant conservation accomplishment in over 50 years. It's the biggest conservation victory for this country in 55 years. And so we do it without costing the taxpayer money. We do it by using dollars that are generated from offshore oil and gas revenues. So we use a resource and we take money from the royalties generated for the federal government, and we actually put it toward the protection, the conservation of other resources. It just makes sense. You know, Ronald Reagan decades ago had decided that we needed to make the Land and Water Conservation Fund permanent and to make sure that it's fully funded. We had not done that until now. And so the money that we're putting into our parks to catch up with the maintenance backlog in our national parks is significant. Just in Colorado, we have about $250 million in need for maintenance backlog just on the national parks. That's Rocky Mountain National Park, Great Sand Dunes, Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park, and beyond. So, that's going to create jobs. It's going to create opportunity. And we did it as Republicans and Democrats alike because we understand and value our great public lands.
One thing you mentioned, Democrats and Republicans alike, Senator Gardner, one thing that's notable about this is the wide bipartisan support that you were able to garner both in the House of Representatives after the Senate passed it and, of course, the Senate, which was up first.
Yeah, we did. So it's a great deal of bipartisan support. You know, I think it passed with 75 votes out of the Senate, 310 in the House, Republicans and Democrats who voted to make it happen. And, you know, but it took the president as well, a willingness by the president to sign it. It took Senator McConnell willingness to bring it to the floor, to spend, nearly 2 weeks of floor debate on the Great American Outdoors Act. So this bill stands on the shoulders of a lot of people who made this happen.
Now, finally, I know we just have a few minutes left with you, Senator Cory Gardner of Colorado. You are known as an embattled Republican senator from Colorado because you are in a very difficult race for re-election in the state of Colorado. Of course, there are a number of U.S. Senate seats up. Colorado is one of the main focal points. You're up against former Governor John Hickenlooper. And while you had been trailing more for a time, we just saw today a morning consult poll, or just this week, a morning consult poll that shows that you are closing the gap in on Governor Hickenlooper, who again is challenging you as the Democratic nominee. How do you assess the current lay of the land with the race, Senator Gardner?
Well, look, a year ago, John Hickenlooper said that he would make a lousy senator, and he's worked very hard the last 12 months to prove himself right. This is a governor who became the first governor in the history of Colorado to be charged by the state's ethics committee with a violation of our Constitution. He's the first Coloradan in history to ever be held in contempt for refusing to go to his own ethics trial before the Independent Ethics Commission. So, I think that shows you in those two examples what kind of a leader John Hickenlooper believes himself to be, somebody who's above the law, somebody who thinks that he is not accountable to the people of Colorado. And to make things worse, he's decided that he would charge you and I, the taxpayers of Colorado, the legal fees that have been incurred as a result of his violations of the state constitution. So I think Coloradans see through that. They want somebody who's gotten results. They want somebody who's gotten things done for the state. And that's what we're going to be talking about over the next several months as we get to November. The results, the accomplishments, the hard work that I continue to do day in and day out for all four corners of our great state.
What's going on with the debates situation? I was reading this week about how Governor Hickenlooper doesn't really want to go toe-to-toe with you on the debate stage until October.
Well, look, we've challenged Governor Hickenlooper to 5 debates. I think maybe today he agreed to 1 in Pueblo. I hope that there's more that he agrees to. We've set 5 not as a ceiling, but as an opportunity for the people of Colorado. I hope that we have them across the state, not just in the Front Range, but in Western Colorado. Club 20 is sort of it's the Cadillac of political debates in Colorado. It's an opener. It's the opening pitch of the campaign. And I hope that he won't be afraid to share with the people of Western Colorado his views on the state. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the work that we've done in every part of Colorado to make it better and to create more opportunity for our state's great citizens.
Senator Gardner, just a real quick final question, because I know we got to let you go. What should people outside of Colorado know as they watch this U.S. Senate race about what's happening in Colorado?
Well, I think this is a race about, believing in Colorado and believing in this country. I believe in Colorado. I believe that when you get government out of the way and let America work, we can accomplish great things. I believe in making sure that we don't just benefit some people, but we work hard for all people, that the Western Slope, the Eastern Plains deserve a strong voice and somebody who fights for it just as much as we do somebody from Denver. I'm the only statewide elected official who lives more than 30 miles away from downtown Denver. This state deserves a diversity of ideas, opinions, and somebody who knows what rural life is like, somebody who knows the challenges of farming and ranching, somebody who values the energy industry in our state and doesn't think that government ought to be able to fire them and send them through some kind of a government re-education camp so that they can they can go into a job that the government wants them to go into because it likes that job better. This is about freedom. It's about opportunity. It's about creating a stronger Colorado because I believe in it. And that's exactly what we represent and why we will win in November.
So don't count Cory Gardner out in this U.S. Senate race.
Well, look, there's no counting that matters until the votes are counted. And that's what I'll remind everyone.
Senator Cory Gardner of Colorado, great to talk with you, my friend. Thanks for taking the time today.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Once again, that was Senator Cory Gardner joining us earlier here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. Fascinating times in which we live, and Colorado is offers no shortage of fascinating stuff for politicos to study and explore, and it'd be interesting to see what happens come November of this year in this state from which I'm broadcasting, of Colorado. Well, that is it for us today here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. We will be back tomorrow with more engaging, intelligent talk, Sang style. Be sure to tune in then. My thanks once again to Senator Gardner for his time today, as well as Jay Heflin of the Washington Examiner, producer extraordinaire Nathan Matoush, once again working the Matoush magic here, and our partners at the Washington Examiner. Of course, thank you for watching and enjoying the program. Please do share our content, like, subscribe, all those good things. Have a great day, and may God bless America.